3, 2, 1.
What's up, everyone? Dan here, Crypto Capital Venture, June 2nd, 2018, Saturday evening, and I hope you're having a good weekend. In this video, I want to go over a few things. Number one, some news coming out about China you may have heard about. I want to look at Bitcoin a little bit, and I want to look at Litecoin a little bit. So let's jump in. So you may have seen some articles, some news about China the last couple of days, and we're going to look at one right here. Expectations are growing that China will ease its cryptocurrency ban this week after President Xi Jinping called blockchain part of the new industrial revolution. Some powerful words, new industrial revolution. An opinion piece in Chinese English language news resource Global Times Thursday, meanwhile, added to the sense of anticipation that regulators may look again at permitting Bitcoin. More than anything, it claims a pressing concern for the government should be the threat of losing out to competition from more relaxed jurisdictions. Yes, China does not like to lose out to competition. Fencing off Bitcoin exchanges can't effectively end Bitcoin trade, and fears of a Bitcoin bubble could leave China behind in the digital currency revolution, the publication argues. Instead, the country should consider rules and regulations that can ensure the technological advance works in the economy's favor. So, kind of speculation right now, but obviously there's reason for this speculation. You know, a lot of times, especially lately, news hasn't really moved crypto prices as much as times past. But if this continues and some type of big news comes out in regards to China, I think that's something that we could see really move the markets a little bit. So before we talk about Bitcoin, I want to look at the charts on Bitcoin and Litecoin. I do want to point something out that I found interesting on CoinMarketCap, which is the percentage of total market capitalization dominance. And obviously, we all know it's no secret, Bitcoin dominance has gone down a lot in like the last year, especially since this past December, it's gone down. And right now, it's probably, I think, around 38%. But one thing I wanted to point out, you see this gray line right here on this chart is marked others. And you can see since around December at, 12%, it's doubled and it's continued to go up. Right now it's at around 24% dominance. So other cryptos have been picking up steam in terms of dominance, and I'd be curious to follow this trend and see if it continues to close in on Bitcoin dominance, or if we start to see the two separate again and Bitcoin become a little bit stronger in terms of dominance. So that's something that's interesting. I have a feeling Bitcoin's going to pick up some steam and approach that 50% mark eventually. So speaking of Bitcoin, I wanted to use Bitcoin. We talked about this a little bit the other day, and I want to talk about it again just because I think we're at a really interesting, important part in terms of the conversation of bear market and continued trend, continued uptrend, continued bull market. And one thing that I think is probably the most powerful tool to use if you personally want to watch this is this 50 EMA and this 200 EMA. So right now, this chart I have is really the bear market chart on Bitcoin. This is the daily chart. And I just want to point out this 50 EMA crossing, well, let me move this. So this 50 EMA crossing the 200 for that cross back in the beginning of this bear market that we had. And then kind of coming back up above the 200 EMA and then finally crossing below it again. And that was really when, the bear market kind of was more defined, and it lasted a good year or so until we actually started to approach the 200, and momentum you can see turned around. It's a great picture from the past of what this bear market looked like. And I say this is an interesting and important time because right now, and we haven't had this cross since then, to keep that in mind, like we do now. So we've had this pullback from all-time highs, right? And you see this 50 on this first cross down below 200 EMA, back above briefly, and then now back below for the seconds. So really, we're at this time now where it's kind of like, is this going to continue like it did before? And are we going to have this kind of downtrend for a year or so? Are we going to have a bear market type of scenario going on? And it's interesting to watch because right now I feel like we're going to find out pretty soon, at least sooner than later, as we have this really strong consolidation in Bitcoin, obviously, and we follow Litecoin a lot, so the same thing has happened. But we're in this channel right now at the end of this triangle that has just continued to consolidate. So really, the question is, are we going to see separation of this 200 EMA right there and this 50 EMA for a possible bear market, or are we going to actually pick up some steam, pick up some momentum, and start going back up? I know this chart's getting messy, which is okay. We're going to go to the Litecoin chart in a second. But one thing before I do, I wanted to point out on Bitcoin chart, if we were ever to pick up some steam, if we were ever to have this 50 EMA start approaching back up towards the 200 and even crossing above, it could be soon. And a good indicator of that is right now, and we're trying to define this bottom on Bitcoin as well as Litecoin, this third bottom. One thing simultaneously happening is we have the MACD line crossing the red signal line. So the MACD is kind of signaling some bullish momentum and the beginning of bullish momentum, which is good. So let's see what happens in terms of Bitcoin. And then, really the same thing right now in terms of Litecoin as well. One thing I did find interesting is looking at the weekly on Litecoin. Obviously, very, the imagery here of consolidation is very true. It's very similar to what we had in this last bit of consolidation, which we've talked about many, many times in these videos. But one thing I want to point out also is the MACD on the weekly on Litecoin. Right now, if we are to define, we had this cross back in January, first of all. And I want to point out that the last time we had an upward cross of the MACD line above the signal line was pretty much right at the beginning of this crazy uptrend that we had, that a lot of you remember at the end of last year, 2017, going right into all-time highs. So something to look out for in terms of the weekly MACD, which obviously has a long way to go before we actually kind of start turning around here and have another cross. Something to look out for, we can go to the daily now, is pretty much the same thing that we just looked at on the Bitcoin chart, which we can look at and find on the Bitcoin or on the Litecoin MACD, which is we have this cross right now. We're forming this third bottom. So if we need that weekly momentum to turn around, it's obviously going to start, and we're going to start noticing strength on the lower time frames, like the daily time frame. And even the 4 hour, the 8 hour, it's all these mini steps of momentum until we really see a large move. So, but looking at the daily, same thing on the MACD, such as Bitcoin, we have this cross. It's a nice signal. We were tracking the MACD on this cross last time. That's usually when I start to look at the MACDs, when we start approaching. So I brought it up the other day that we were approaching. Now we got the cross. Let's see if it holds. Let's see if momentum continues. And let's see if this bottom holds right now. So things are looking bullish in my opinion, especially for if we are to continue this long-term uptrend. Things are looking bullish as long as this bottom is defined and we don't have a pullback. I thought I had a 4 hour chart, but I don't have it up. Let me just switch it here. So right now, as we're trying to solidify this bottom, and I tweeted about this earlier, right before I think we were like just approaching the 122 area, which we've had a lot of rejection over the past week or so at 122. So it's nice to see that we're above it. So my first line of support that I'd like to look for is to see if we can stay above it, and stay above it for at least a day would be nice, a nice sign. And again, we talked about this, and this is how I'll end this video, which is we had this bottom that we're hopeful for, and in a true, turnaround of events on the 4 hour, we would look for these higher lows and these higher highs, which are happening. And you may have remembered me doing this video probably around the 30th. I don't remember what day it was, but right around here. And I said, let's look for these higher lows and higher highs. And so far we've gotten them. So something to keep an eye on. For me, if you're watching this daily, I like to watch the 1 hour, the 4 hour, and we can kind of just track it. if you're like me, you check your phone every once in a while anyway, so why not have your charts open, draw some lines, have some fun with it. It's like watching a movie that you just don't know exactly what's going to happen. But as always, be careful out there. Don't spend more than you can afford to lose. I'd say playing conservative is the best way to play. Let me know how you're doing out there in the markets. It's nice to at least have some signs of bullishness. Let me know if you agree. Are you bullish? Are you bearish? I know there's a lot of you out there. I've seen in the comments, you think we're going down, so only time will tell. But as always, I really appreciate you watching. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers. It's taken a little longer than I was hoping to give away one of these LED lights that you see back there, Litecoin LED lights, but I will be giving it away once we hit 10K. So thank you all for coming by. I will see you in the next video, and God bless.